Hello guys, this is Papa Moose on the loose with you and a review of a brand new scenery of Krakow Airport version 1.0 for Lockheed Martin Prepare 3D. The scenery is available for P3D versions 3 and 4 Plus. Only a few weeks ago, working on a video on an MD-82 flight, I moaned about the lack of current and operationally up-to-date scenery of Krakow Airport for FSX or P3D, and the resulting necessity to operate on an old, outdated and divergent to a large extent from reality scenery released in 2012 by FlyDesign, incompatible with P3D version 4 Plus. And here we go, following its earlier release for Explain, FlyDesign have recently published a brand new scenery for Echo Papa Kilo Kilo. It is high time then we had a closer look into the product, which I will try to inspect with regards to its graphic, operational and functional aspects. Just at the first glimpse, it appears that the creators of the new scenery took great care to map the real existing conditions of objects and surfaces. Now we have extended apron, new aircraft stands, taxiways, new terminal extension, towers and jetways have turned up, and there is a newly constructed traffic control tower, medical air rescue station with the helipad, which, however, in my humble opinion, could have received a much better touch rather than the blurred photomap background only. There is a construction supply base in the northeast of the airport with its characteristic silos, which had never appeared in previous sceneries before. In the military part, the aprons have also been extended in line with the real conditions. There is a new hangar, the perennial and always present there casas, closely resembling those from the previous FlyDesign scenery, not without some textural flaws though. There is a Polish government Boeing 737-800, but I find it difficult to understand, however, what is a regular Dreamliner B787 of alert Polish airlines doing there at the military. The only time ever such aircraft was there, in fact, was the departure of Pope Francis in 2016. Maybe the time has stopped for the creators and the Pope is still there. Generally, it seems that the designers have not forgotten to place almost all really existing elements of airport airside infrastructure with good quality textures. Let's go back to the civil aprons. The movement and maneuvering areas are precisely and carefully marked. Also, the textures of surfaces have been made with great care. And from the point of view of a virtual pilot operating on the airside, all this pleads in favor of this product. A review would not be a review though if one would only concentrate on pros, and there are, so to say, also some inadequacies or empty spaces which seem asking to be replenished with some objects. Insofar as there is absolutely no reason to complain about scarcity of various elements on the airside, the impression one can get at the landside is, so to say, a bit different. The only non-airport buildings pictured here are the hotel and multi-story car park, and apart from those, the surroundings seem quite impoverished and boring. It is obvious that virtual pilots do not often tend to operate on the land side. However, creators of various add-on sceneries have for years spoiled seamers with prolific characteristic objects or landmarks on the land side. Not here. All we have is just a very nice airport and practically nothing around. We lose a bit of airport vitality, but probably gain on functionality. What I mean here is the processor load and frames to be generated per second, but I will talk about it later in this material. It looks like a quid pro quo, but it does not change the impression that the aprons are full of life and the landside is deserted and dead. I hope FlyDesign are not going to take me to court for saying this. Let's go back to where something is happening. The first thing which has attracted my attention is a discrepancy between graphically perfect jetway towers and jetway themselves, starting in this version, and the texture covering the windowed part of the terminal. At least for me, this texture seems somewhat strange and real, and one can say even ugly. I was wondering for a while what was wrong with this texture, and after a closer look, Here we go. One can easily observe that the entire window length along the new terminal building presents the same imperfect photo texture, which has been multiplied a few times. The final effect is, as I see it, rather eye unfriendly. I'm not saying that the scenery should have been made heavier by 3D objects inside the terminal, however, the quality and recurrence of the texture did not result in a very nice effect. Another thing is the docking station posts, which in fact do not occur in reality at Krakow Airport. They're not planned to be implemented, and all aircraft are guided to standby marshals. Occasionally, in some sceneries, there are things added intentionally, despite the fact that they do not exist in real, with the rationale behind it, as developers say, that they need enhancement to the scenery to make it look more attractive. And for a visitor pilot, they will be hard to detect as not real anyway. Well, question of preference, I choose to follow the as it gets, as real as it gets attitude. Also here the creators have given us a bit of, I'd say, added value. An example is a big advertising post displaced, which in reality cannot be seen from the apron at all. Another thing is some kind of placards with aviation-related brands on technical hangar windows, which I see a bit defacing, especially that these do not occur in reality neither. The developers may have intended to add a bit more color to the overall picture of the scenery. Whether they have been successful or not, you can decide for yourselves. If you do not know the real airport, you may find it actually okay, but if you do, like in my case, or happen to know it, then you may not really enjoy the discrepancy. Turning a blind eye on these lapses, it must be admitted that operating on the airside gives a lot of pleasure to the eye. The creators took care to include equipment, vehicles marked in accordance with real companies present at the airport, little human elements appearing unobtrusively in places where you'd expect them to be on a real tarmac, static aircraft illuminated at night and with navigation lights even at day. All of these make the aprons vital, giving an overall good impression. Taxiing along carefully mastered surfaces, very nicely reflecting lights in the dark, it is hard to have any reservations to night illumination of the airport, especially if we consider dynamic lighting options offered by P3D. A bit of attention should be paid to the runway texture, which reflects the real condition and wear and tear. In reality, what can also be seen in the scenery, the runway is practically so deteriorated by time that it should be either closed or reconstructed from the scratch, which would result in several months of airport closure, since it practically would need removal and replacement of the entire concrete surface together with all sub-bases and beddings beneath and the underground infrastructure. Economically speaking, this option cannot be considered, therefore a new runway is planned to be constructed almost alongside the present one, and these plans are currently being laboriously implemented. Until then, the runway is closed every night for a few hours and the cracks are provisionally patched or repaired. And this is exactly what you can see on the virtual runway. The only thing which is overdone, in my opinion, is the abundance of black rubber trails. In reality, we do care to have them cleaned periodically here at Krakow Airport, and they never look that bad. To sum up the graphic representation, despite few reservations, from general perspective, the aerodrome looks very nice and functional, and what is more, it is full of life on the airside, up to date regarding the existing infrastructure, and encouraging to operate from. Let us now have a look on the operational aspect. As I have already mentioned, all taxiways, tarmac and aircraft stands are depicted correctly and very well marked and signed where applicable. The taxi and runway lights, both edge and central, as well as approach lights, are distinct but not blurred, and they look very, I would say, operational. Radio navigational aids are there in place, function well, no reservations in this field whatsoever. There is, however, one problem. I wouldn't be myself without hooking on something. The creators seem not to have succeeded in avoiding certain inaccuracies which cannot be spotted on the first glimpse, namely inappropriate designation of some aircraft sizes and well coded in the FCAT file. More advanced simmers are aware what I'm talking about here. Insofar as this would make practically no difference to users flying without any add-ons, in case of simmers such as me, for example, who like to enrich their simulation environment with programs such as Ground Services X, at least for pushback or taxiing in, one needs to spend a short while and reconfigure the size of aircraft for a given stand in this add-on. For example, stands 3 right, 4 left or 7 are in real life designated for aircraft up to code letter E category, such as B787, B747 or Airbus 330, whereas these stands have been coded here in the scenery for medium-size aircraft in code letter D. It is, however, not a big problem. All you need to do is to reconfigure with a few mouse clicks the aircraft size to large at each stand, and here we go, ready for pushback. Now a few words about the functionality. The creators allow 4 options of scenery installation: light, with or without static aircraft, and high, implying heavy, also with a selection of static aircraft or not. The installer does not register the scenery in P3D automatically. This needs to be done manually by the user. So far in this material, all you have seen was recorded in the full heavy version of the scenery. Using this option, the rate of so-called frames per second, with aircraft known to be rather heavy on processor loads such as PMDG 737 or Quality Wing 787, depending on the point of view, ranges from 10 to 25, and during ground maneuvers, taxiing or takeoff, drops in smoothness can be at times detectable. Obviously, a lot depends here on the user's software, simulation settings and installed add-ons. Mine, which are used for testing, are displayed on the screen. Having installed the light version, one can easily notice that the difference from the between the high version and the light one lies basically in the amount of static equipment on the aprons, buses, air stars, refueling truck and so on, whereas the building objects are all there unchanged. Seemingly also the textures are of the same quality, but the frames with the virtual cockpit with heavier aircraft do not drop below 25, which means quite a lot of difference in favor for functionality. If therefore one does not particularly care about the volumes of apron equipment on the apron, they can enjoy the live scenery without harm to the quality and number of scenery buildings. As we all know, the most unpleasant experience for a virtual pilot is dropping frame rates during landings. Here, as we can see, the light version allows an acceptable level of smoothness. This is another pro. Last but not least, yes, I did find a catch, or so to say, rather a drawback. The problem where I see it lies in coding of all building objects only to appear visible after changing the scenery density setting to dense or higher. If set to normal, all we are left with is just the flat apron. It seems a rare case in add-on sceneries, usually with the normal setting, at least some of the most representative airport buildings are displayed, but not here. It is unfortunately an inconvenience, as the scenery as such imposes operation on higher simulation settings, which, as a consequence, may have an impact on performance during the entire flight itself, especially for those with no high-end hardware. Possibly this will be changed by FlyDesign in later patches or updates, possibly, if this turns out to be a problem reported by other users, not only by me. So if you happen to have similar observations, send your feedback to the developer to have it changed. Finally, let me have a digression I found difficult not to make here, and this feeling will probably be shared with all those who have so far used the Kraków-Balice 2012 scenery by Drzewiecki Design for years. In my humble opinion, the only drawback of that old scenery is the fact of being outdated. The processor and system load is comparable here in both cases, but the graphic touch in the old scenery seemed a bit better refined. Well, maybe except for the apron, taxiway and runway surface textures, but this is again subjective. Alongside with the aerodrome, the scenery offered also its surroundings and elements such as nicely modelled motorway junction, as well as the city of Krakow itself with its characteristic landmarks and buildings, which some of us, especially locally based pilots such as me, I live in Kraków, are now going to miss. All in all, I strongly believe that the product is a good value, especially with regards to its reasonable price, and my overall impression is indeed positive. The user will enjoy an operationally up-to-date airport of medium load, but offering also a light version, frame-friendly, without harm to texture quality. Some of the drawbacks, such as the earlier mentioned terminal window mask, is just one of the few elements which may tease the eye. Coding of building objects needs to be changed as well, so they become visible with normal scenery setting and not impose operating on often unnecessarily high simulated graphic parameters, which may result in a drop of overall functionality. And I am tempted to risk an opinion that if the aerodrome surroundings are one day enriched, keeping the present parameters, which we know from other autumn sceneries is possible, I am more than convinced that this scenery can be fully recommended even at a higher price. We should keep in mind that this is only the first available version 1.0, and FlyDesign assume further patches and updates. They are a very open and enthusiastic group of creators taking great care of quality of the products, who listen to users, and it makes me believe that there are chances that the current version 1.0 is just a good beginning. This would be all for now. If you like the material and appreciate my work, click the like button and leave a comment. All comments welcome. I wish all happy, or at least non-disappointed users a lot of enjoyment flying to or from Kraków. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.